it maybe that may be getting for me maybe getting the cart a little bit before the horse, because creativity for me is something that comes on top of a disciplined study. For me, it's about building a structure, an intellectual structure, if you will, that includes all the rules and everything you can learn from the history of your discipline. You know, in theater, for example, we've got 2,000 years of discipline to learn from. It's a little iffy in the Dark Ages, you know. They weren't writing down too much about their theater. There wasn't much. But the point is, you know, basically you build this structure of ideas, of logic and things of that sort. And then when that structure becomes solid enough, then something sort of magical can happen on top of that that frees you toward the creative, if that makes any sense. Working backwards from that, I find that some of these, I'm like 30 years from my PhD work at KU, and so I'm not in the habit of talking about this stuff or writing about it. But it's interesting how some of the grander ideas are consistent all the way down to the way you function on a daily basis. For example, I have this staging technique I call the playpen theory of staging for the actors, which means basically that you build a structure that's safe and you establish all the rules for a given production. And so you're building this container. Oh, it's like a box. You're building this container that includes all the rules, all the disciplines. It's safe, no one can hurt themselves, such that you're free within that structure to do just about anything. And that's how I work with actors. I build a set that is safe, secure, meets certain demands of a project, toss in toys, toss in props, toss in things to play with, and then let it happen. Just throw people in and see what comes out of it. So I call it the playpen theory, like tossing a kid in a playpen with a bunch of toys. It's safe. Whatever they do is going to work. And so for me, it's kind of the same thing all the way up the philosophical ladder. At the very top, you have, the mass creative energy that makes art. You have the discipline of your, the history of your discipline, all the rules, all the demands. And as those things get stable, you're able to be free of the logical because you've worked so hard at it, if that makes any sense. It's my PhD work was in the early 80s, and we were studying a book called The Crack in the Cosmic Egg. Wonderful, sort of a little new agey probably. Ron Willis, Dr. Ron Willis was teaching that course at KU, and I reminded him of how important that reading had been to me. He said, "Oh, was I teaching that back then?" He didn't even remember it because it was so transitory. But it was studying a lot about the Peruvian shamans and all that sort of thing. But the whole basic idea, even with Suzanne Langer tossed in, I think that you build a structure on top of which you can behave creatively because you have a discipline. It's like a dancer. There's no freedom in a dance class. You do this, you do that. There is only one correct way to do it. And you do that hopefully from the time you're 5 years old. And you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and at some point, you're able to dance because you have given yourself to a discipline. So to me, it's the same thing with a dancer, is years of discipline on top of which you can dance. And that's why I was thinking, it's interesting because I was thinking about us chatting today. I was thinking about this thing that everyone says about working outside the box these days, which is far too hackneyed a phrase. And I sometimes sort of resent it because there is the implication in it, I think, that the box is a bad thing. And I absolutely disagree with that. The box is absolutely essential. You can't work on top of the box, or you can't float inside the box unless the box is stable. You have to know what the demands of the moment are, what the project wants from you. You have to have your craft in place. You can't be creative if your craft isn't in place, because it doesn't matter. You can be as creative as you want, but if you can't have an artistic result to the creative instinct without craft. So to me, the box is our friend, not our enemy. And so to deny the box is to deny the importance of craft, to deny the importance of understanding the demands of the project. So Shane and I, my tech director, we're doing a set this summer. Oddly, we kind of play around here and we take on different creative things. And he was, grousing the other day about something he wanted to do on stage, and wanted to think out of the box. And I'm going, oh, that's great. But if you do that, those people in those seats can't see that actor. And that's where our boss, our executive director, Lily Zarda, the only place she sits in rehearsal is in the worst seats in the house. So the point is, you can't deny the demands of the project. You have to include the demands of the project in your work outside the box. That isn't to deny that there isn't a level of creative freedom that goes on top of craft and study and discipline. And there's many ways to get there. One of the things I demand all along is, I call it the practice of invention, meaning that at any given moment, your knee-jerk is an inventive one, just because you've studied and worked to accomplish that. And it can be taught. I think invention can be taught. I was taught it by some extraordinary professors along the way. I know you can teach invention. It still takes talent and a leaning towards it. But, for example, going back now to the very basic level, not the philosophical level, when I'm dealing with an actor or designers or technicians too, I always demand 5 solutions. It's the rule of 5. Like if I'm working, for example, with an actor, and I say, try this, and he says, the character wouldn't do that. Wouldn't's not a word we allow, but that's another subject. He'd do this. And then I'll say, well, that's 2 solutions we've offered. Give me 3 more. And it gets rid of that assumption that there's only one answer. There's always 5 answers, and then you choose the best answer. The same way with my technicians. You can't tell me we can't do that until you've given me 5 solutions and told me what it'll cost on each of those 5 solutions. And we can say, well, all 5 of those are too expensive, and then we'll not do it. But it's kind of like I ask everybody to be prepared with 5 solutions, not 1. And out of 5, one of them is probably going to be really creative because you didn't go with the first one. Now, sometimes it is the first one. If you're in the habit of invention, if you've built it into your life and into your craft, maybe the first response will be the most inventive and most interesting response. But the way you keep challenging that is by not settling for the first one. You can always go back to the first one. I generally do. If I read a script, my first response usually is the one I will go with because it strikes. It's the one that struck home. But you have to ask the other. You have to go to the other places. I always ask of myself and everyone else that you do go to some extreme place. What if, and we did something totally creative? 99 out of 100 times, once you've gotten to that place, good judgment and reality will probably bring you back. But you do need to go there. You go to that extreme place, and then chances are you'll come back. It's not, as often as not, it's not an appropriate place, but you want to be in the habit of going there. So you go to the extreme place, go to the inventive place, and then decide where you're going to end up.